we're here today to talk about the data that we've collected from our tests that we've taken recently, and then our instructional plan that goes along with the information we've gotten from the data. So our students took the performance series test. They took it in August, which kind of set a baseline score for them, and using their scores, performance series generates a individual goal for each student. So our students took it again in January to kind of assess where they are at the mid-year towards meeting that goal. They took the reading foundations test, they took the reading test, and they took the math test. And we know that they'll take the test again in May to determine if they meet those individual learning goals. So we're going to start by looking at our strengths. And this is a copy of the presentation if you want to take some notes. And this is a copy of your data that you can follow along with. So the good news is that most of our students showed a large amount of growth from the beginning of the year assessment to the middle of the year assessment. So a lot of things we're doing are working. We just need to tweak some things or maybe bring in some new strategies to help our students. These are some of the standards that they scored well on. The first one was identifying missing numbers in addition and subtraction families. And talking between us, one of the things that we talked about was we think that was probably a strength because we've incorporated that in our number talks that we do each day with our students. Another area of strength was identifying setting of a second grade short fictional text as well as the main characters of short fictional text. So we've talked about our strengths, and now we need to look at our weaknesses. The good news is that overall we had a lot more strengths than weaknesses, but we are going to look at these three, and we agree that after kind of looking at our data, these areas are consistent across the grade level, that all of our students showed some weakness with these. The first one was applying reading skills to a second grade long text, and we said we think most of the weakness that comes with that is the lack of stamina, and we're going to talk about ways to increase that reading stamina for those long text passages. Identifying cause and effect in a second grade short fictional text, and using equations to solve two-step addition and subtraction word problems within 100. So those were the three weaknesses, and we came up with a plan to help our students better perform in those areas. The first weakness that we're going to talk about is applying reading skills to a long second grade passage. So the action steps that we've kind of all agreed on are we really need to build our students' stamina, and to do that, one strategy that we're going to incorporate is the 5-finger rule to choose what we call a just right book. We've talked about why that's important. We've talked about maybe on Mondays, just quickly having a quick conference with each child to set a weekly personal reading goal, and then to hold them accountable for those reading goals. We will implement reading logs to document their reading time and the book's level of difficulty, which kind of relates back to the 5-finger rule. Are they choosing appropriate books to help build that stamina? Our next area of weakness was identifying cause and effect in a short fiction passage, and this was really the only reading skill that they scored low in short fiction, so that's why it's something that we're going to discuss and talk about and implement this new plan. We had talked about displaying a cause and effect anchor chart in each classroom. Of course, that'll be teacher made, but hang it somewhere prominent that students see a lot. And the next one was, as we do our read alouds, really model how you identify cause and effect, examples of cause and effect in the story, maybe pose questions, what caused this or what was the effect of this action in the story, just so students hear it more, they're more comfortable with it. And the third step for this weakness was to provide students short fiction passages to practice identifying cause and effect. Because we know that when they take their test, they have to do that independently. We can't read the passage to them. We can't model asking questions. So we really need to provide them some independent practice with that skill. The third weakness was using equations to solve two-step addition and subtraction word problems. Now, we've taught addition and subtraction, so we kind of talked about what was the interference here? Why are they scoring low in this area? Because they did score high in addition, and they did score high in subtraction. When you throw the word problem aspect in there, our scores really dropped. So in order to address that, we're going to add a 2-step word problem to our daily spiral review, because we do the daily spiral review every day. You know, it's really quick. It's 5 to 10 minutes. So we're going to add that 2-step word problem each day. It's also going to be important for us as teachers to really model what our thinking sounds like as we're doing this. So read the problem and think, okay, this is what I would do, or this is why I'm doing this. That's important. Encourage students to share their thinking, kind of like we do in our number talks. We're going to carry that over into our kind of word problem of the day. And then to teach those key words, what are they looking for? You know, how much is left or how many more? We want to teach them to look for those things and what those key words are telling you to do. So those are the action steps we're going to take to help our kids with the word problems. Okay, so how are we going to assess this progress? We have this great plan. Now we need to talk about how we're going to see if our plan is successful. So these are the formative assessments we talked about, but we chose these because they're quick. You know, we don't have a whole lot of extra time. We don't want to just keep assessing our kids. We know they're assessed a lot. So real quick, exit slips, you know, maybe on Friday, take that word problem of the day and turn it into an exit slip, put it on the board, let the kids do it independently, collect up those exit slips, and it's real quick for you to see, you know, okay, this stack of kids got it, these didn't. I'm going to pull them maybe Monday and do a quick intervention lesson with them. And then we also talked about doing a think, pair, share, which that doesn't even involve writing. That's a little more of an assessment that the kids like because they're thinking on their own. They're sharing with a partner. They're having conversation about what they did, how they solved the problem. So having that conversation is a good way for students to learn from each other. And then our next steps. So we have students that as we're going through this plan, they're going to master the standard. So what will it look like for them after they've mastered the standard? We've talked about including practice for each of these 3 weaknesses in our daily reading centers. This will help just reinforce those skills. It'll provide an opportunity for small group practice and individual practice, like we talked about earlier. You know, they have to take these tests individually. We can't read the information to them, and we can model and model and model, but at some point we've got to release them and let them try to do it on their own and see where they're at. So for those students that are still struggling to master the standard, we'll reteach that in a small group using our Tier 2 strategies that we use during our Tier 2 instruction. And students will practice the skill on their reading level because a lot of times we know, you know, if we have our students coming in a year or 2 behind grade level and we give them a 2nd grade level passage, it doesn't matter if they know how to compare and contrast or not, they can't read the passage. So we're not assessing if they understand and can use the skill because they can't read the passage. So if we allow them to practice using grade level passages, then we can really assess, do they understand the skill or is it an issue with the reading? So that's kind of the plan we've come up with. Those are the next steps. Once they once we kind of go through our reteaching, we'll assess as needed when we think it's appropriate. So are there any questions or comments kind of about the plan that we've talked about?
I was going to comment on the 5-finger rule.
Mm-hmm.
When I was a librarian, we actually used that in our library, and it was very successful to help kids find a just right book. And that will increase their stamina with reading. If they're not getting something that's too hard, and the passages are way too long, they're gonna struggle quite a bit. So the 5-finger rule is a great thing to integrate.
Yeah, because I think sometimes these kids that are reading, I mean, you know, we teach 2nd grade, and we have kids, some that are reading on a 3rd and 4th grade level, and they're picking these easy picture books, and I want to encourage them, read what you are interested in reading, but that doesn't build that stamina,
Right.
like we talked about, so
Right.
that is important. Because I think you're right, I think sometimes, you know, or you have those kids that come back from the library that are on a 1st or 2nd grade level with a Harry Potter book.
Right. Exactly.
And they're so excited they have a Harry Potter book, but that's not an appropriate book for them.
Right.
So, how did you deal with that in the library when they would choose books that?
Well, I would practice it with them in the library, and knowing going into it that it was going to be too rich in text for them, I would already have something in mind that was on the similar lines along Harry Potter and kind of offer that to them as a second choice. And a lot of times that would work. they would see after reading a page that it was going to be too intense for them, so they'd put it back
Yeah,
and go with the second option.
okay. Well, yeah, I think that'll be a good strategy to implement, because we've gotta build that stamina, because that's where we saw kind of across the board, we were low in with that long passage text. So,
Right.
if there's no other questions, we'll start using these strategies and meet again in a few weeks and kind of look at where we're at. Is it helpful? Do we need to revisit any of this? And if so, we'll sit down and talk again.
Okay,
All
great.
right, thank you.
Thank you.